Listen to understand, not to respond. There's a tiny habit that wrecks conversations. While someone's talking, you're quietly rehearsing your reply. I used to do it all the time. Halfway through a story from my partner, I'd already be planning the perfect comeback, which meant I wasn't really hearing the part that mattered. That split-second busy work does something sneaky. It turns listening into a performance rather than a gift. Psychologically, genuine listening shifts the brain from answer mode to attune mode. Instead of scanning for a hole where your opinion fits, you tune into tone, breath, and small hesitations. These aren't empty spaces. They're windows into the speaker's emotional world. When you pause your impulse to respond, you give the other person room to organize their thoughts, to name feelings they might not have realized were there. In my experience, the most meaningful conversations happen in those pauses. Silence is misunderstood. We treat it like a void to fill, but silence does work for you. A 2 to 3 second pause after someone finishes a sentence can feel long, but it invites depth. People often add the detail that really matters only after they notice you're not rushing them. Practically, that pause gives your brain time to switch from formulating to feeling. Instead of throwing in a quick solution or anecdote, try to sit with what they said. Let the quiet do the heavy lifting. Emotional attunement is more than sympathy. It's matching the pace and temperature of their experience. If they speak slowly and softly, slow down and soften. If they're rapid and anxious, slow yourself just enough to be steady, not frantic. Mirroring tone and tempo isn't manipulation. It's a signal. I'm here with you. One quick technique I use: silently note one word that captures the emotion. Overwhelmed, excited, hurt, then reflect it back. Sounds like that left you really overwhelmed, gives the speaker permission to deepen or correct you. Here are small, practical moves you can try tomorrow. Breathe once before you answer. Count to 3 in your head. Make a short, reflective statement rather than an immediate fix. And ask open questions like, what was that like for you? Minimal encouragers, nods, I see. Keep the flow without steering it. Over time, these habits change more than conversation style. They change how people feel around you. They'll start bringing the real stuff, not just the polished highlights. Keep that in mind as we move on to how to turn this kind of listening into action without losing the connection. Too many yes becomes self-betrayal. For years, I thought being useful and available was the same thing as being a good person. If someone needed help, I said yes. If a friend invited me out when I was tired, I said yes. If a coworker asked for another favor, I said yes. It felt safe, like I was building goodwill, proving myself, staying liked. But over time, that safety wore thin. The string of yeses started to tug at me in small, annoying ways. A missed gym session here, a cancelled plan with myself there. Those little compromises stacked up until I woke up resenting myself more than anyone else. That's the heart of it. Too many yeses become self-betrayal. When you constantly prioritize other people's needs over your own, you're slowly eroding your sense of authenticity. You're showing up for everyone else's life while your own priorities get shuffled to the bottom of the pile. The irony is, the same people you're trying to please may begin to see a version of you that's tired, distracted, and less available emotionally. And that harms relationships too. Burnout sneaks in quietly. It starts as exhaustion and turns into cynicism, poor sleep, stomach knots, and the shrinking of joy. I remember the moment it clicked for me. I was late for something I actually wanted to do because I'd promised my time to someone else. The frustration I felt wasn't just about being late. It was about the small death of my choices. That anger was, in reality, grief for my own time. Learning to say no wasn't a sudden revelation. It was a muscle I had to build. The first few times I refused requests, I felt nauseous. I worried about being judged, losing friends, or missing opportunities. But each time I honored a boundary, something shifted. There was relief. There was clarity. My days started to match my values because my schedule reflected my priorities. Here's what helped me and what you can try this week. Notice the immediate gut reaction. If your body tightens when someone asks something, that's a signal. Pause. Use the delay tactic. Let me check my schedule and get back to you. It buys space to decide without pressure. Keep it short and factual. You don't need to justify or invent elaborate reasons. "I can't take that on right now" is enough. Offer an alternative only if you mean it. Saying "maybe next month" when you don't intend to follow up dilutes your credibility. Protect your calendar like you protect a close friendship. Blocking time for rest, projects, or hobbies makes your boundaries visible and real. Saying no restores peace because it aligns your actions with your values. It restores integrity because you stop promising what you can't deliver. And most importantly, it restores self-respect. You learn to treat your time and energy as worthy of protection. It's not selfish, it's self-honoring. Start small. Say no to one thing this week that doesn't serve you. Notice how it feels. Celebrate the tiny victory. Each respectful refusal strengthens your ability to live a life that actually feels like yours. Rest is a strategy, not a reward. That leads to a point that's easy to overlook. Rest isn't a trophy you cash in after you finish everything. It's not the dessert you get if you've been good all week. Rest is an intentional strategy, a performance tool you use to sharpen the rest of your life. I learned this the hard way. For years I wore busy like armor. I would push through late nights, skip breaks, and tell myself the grind would pay off. And sometimes it did, but too often the payoff was mixed. Decisions that felt impulsive in the moment, projects that hit a creativity wall, and emotional blow-ups over small things. Only after a string of mistakes did I try something different. Schedule rest like a meeting. The difference was immediate. My decisions were calmer, ideas came with less effort, and I got less hijacked by stress. Here's why that works. When you rest, even in short, deliberate ways, you give your brain space to process. Decision-making relies on executive functions that fatigue with prolonged strain. Think about the last time you made a poor choice late in the day. That wasn't just bad luck. It was cognitive depletion. A brief pause, a nap, a walk outside, or a real, full night's sleep restores those functions. Suddenly, complex trade-offs feel manageable again. Creativity follows a similar pattern. There's a science-y word for it: incubation. When you step away from a problem, your subconscious keeps working on it. I've had some of my best ideas while doing dishes or on a slow run. Moments when the mind relaxes and connects the dots it couldn't see while hyper-focusing. Rest doesn't kill momentum, it fertilizes it. It turns grind into insight. Emotional regulation is another place rest pays dividends. When you're tired, the amygdala, your brain's alarm system, gets louder, and the prefrontal cortex that calms it down gets quieter. The result? You overreact, you take things personally, you make small slights into disasters. Rest rebalances that system. You're less reactive, more resilient, and better at seeing problems as solvable rather than catastrophic. So how do you treat rest like a strategy? First, schedule it. Put naps, walks, or an evening cutoff on your calendar and honor them. Second, make rest deliberate. Not everything labeled relaxing helps. Passive doom scrolling feels restful until it doesn't. Choose activities that actually replenish, reading that isn't work-related, gentle movement, time in nature, or simply staring out a window. Third, protect sleep like it's a non-negotiable meeting with your future self. Invest in routines that signal to your body it's time to wind down. Finally, reframe what success looks like. High performance isn't measured by how many hours you log awake. It's measured by quality, the clarity of your decisions, the originality of your ideas, and your ability to stay steady under pressure. When you make rest a strategy, you stop burning matches and start building a sustainable glow. Kindness is doing, not offering. You know that moment when someone says, "Let me know if you need anything," and you both smile, but neither of you actually says anything. I used to be the giver of that line. It felt polite, easy. Then a friend went through a rough patch and I realized how hollow it sounded to them. What they needed wasn't a verbal safety net, it was concrete relief. I showed up with a cooler of meals and a time set for babysitting. That small, specific action changed everything. Psychologically, this matters because vague offers leave the burden on the person in need. When you say, "Let me know," you're asking them to diagnose their problem, decide what help looks like, and overcome social friction to ask for it. That's a lot of cognitive and emotional work when someone's already stressed. Specific actions. "I'll bring dinner at 6, or "I can pick up your prescription on my way home." Remove that load. They reduce decision fatigue and make help immediate and usable. There's also something important about how initiative signals emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence isn't just feeling someone's pain, it's translating that feeling into behavior. It's noticing the laundry piling up, remembering they hate supermarket lines, and acting before they ask. That shows you were paying attention, that you understand their experience enough to anticipate needs. It communicates respect and trust. "I see you, and I'll take this off your plate." Research supports this. People report feeling more supported and less ashamed when help is offered proactively. Small acts, a text that says, "I've got your mail," or a hand-drawn list left on the fridge, trigger oxytocin and lower cortisol by signaling safety and relief. Practically, specificity beats generosity in the abstract. No one remembers how often someone said, "Call me if you need anything," but everyone remembers the neighbor who watered their plants while they were hospitalized. So, how do you practice this? Start small and concrete. Instead of asking, "How can I help?" try, "I can come by at 5 and take your dog for a walk." Offer a time, an action, a frequency. If you can't commit, be honest. "I can do Tuesdays" is better than "maybe later." Follow through. Reliability is part of kindness. Finally, read context. Sometimes people need space. Sometimes they need groceries. If you're unsure, propose a specific option and let them accept or decline without asking them to invent help. This shift, from polite offers to intentional doing, makes kindness tangible. It turns empathy into relief, and it builds bonds that last. Next, we'll unpack how boundaries and follow-through keep that kindness healthy for both people involved. Compliment effort, not outcome. One small change in how we speak can flip the whole way someone approaches a challenge. Instead of saying, "You're so smart," or "That was an amazing score," try shifting to the process. "You worked so hard on that," or "I noticed how consistent you were with your practice." That shift, from outcome to effort, is the backbone of a growth mindset. It tells someone that skill comes from strategies, persistence, and learning, not from a fixed trait they either have or don't. I learnt this the hard way with my first attempt at learning guitar. After my first shaky performance, a friend said, "You're a natural." I felt great, for a day, but the minute a song tripped me up, I panicked and avoided tougher pieces because I didn't want to lose that natural label. Later, when a teacher started pointing out specific things I was doing, "Your finger placement has really improved because you practiced those chord drills," I began to enjoy the practice. I pushed through awkward stages instead of hiding. That's the power of compliments that honor effort. They fuel intrinsic motivation, the internal drive to keep improving because the activity itself becomes rewarding. Psychologists call this a growth mindset, the belief that abilities can be developed through hard work, good strategies, and helpful feedback. When we focus praise on outcomes, grades, trophies, applause, we unintentionally teach people to chase approval and avoid risks that could expose them. When we praise effort and strategy, we teach them to value the process. They become curious about what works, resilient when things get tough, and more willing to try again after failure. So how do you make this practical and personal? Start by being specific. Instead of "good job," try, "I saw you breaking that problem into smaller steps. That's a great strategy." Or, You kept going even when it got hard. That persistence makes a big difference. Ask process-focused questions. What did you try differently this time? Or, which part of your practice helped the most? Those questions make people reflect and internalize learning. They notice the link between effort and improvement. Be careful too with timing and authenticity. Don't praise effort when there wasn't much effort. That teaches people to expect empty compliments. Notice real moments of persistence, creative problem solving, or deliberate practice and highlight those. For kids, teammates, or colleagues, name the strategy, breaking tasks into 20-minute blocks, the attitude, sticking with it despite setbacks, or the improvement, you've increased your accuracy by practicing drills every day. Over time, this kind of feedback builds authentic confidence, not a fragile "I'm the best" pride, but a steady belief. I can get better if I work and learn. People become more resilient because effort-focused praise normalizes struggle as part of growth instead of proof of failure. They try harder, learn faster, and take on challenges with less fear. Next, we'll look at simple language patterns you can use right away to make effort-based praise a habit, and how those little phrases change how people show up for themselves and others. Own your slice of the mess. There's a small, powerful thing you can do in any argument. Admit the part you actually did, not the whole thing, not a fake apology to shut someone up. Just your slice, the missed text, the tone you used, the promise you didn't keep. When I started doing this, fights that used to blow up into cold silences turned into short, fixable conversations. Picture a simple example. Your partner is frustrated because you forgot to pick up groceries. Instead of saying, "You're overreacting," try, "You're right. I forgot the groceries and I see why you're annoyed." That little admission lowers their defenses like a key turning a lock. It says, "I see you," which makes people want to see you back. Why does this work? Because defensiveness is contagious. When both people are on guard, the conversation becomes a duel of proofs and grievances. Humility, owning your slice, interrupts that spiral. It signals safety. The other person feels heard and is more likely to stop proving you wrong and start solving the problem. I learned it the hard way in a project at work. We missed a deadline and fingers started pointing. My knee-jerk response was to catalogue everyone else's mistakes. The meeting went nowhere. Later, I asked for a moment and said, "I misjudged the timeline and I should have raised the flag sooner." That simple line shifted the room. People stopped rehearsing blame and began mapping fixes, reassigning tasks, adjusting scope, setting check-ins. We salvaged the project and, more importantly, kept the team intact. How to do it without becoming a doormat. Be specific. "I didn't call" is better than "I'm sorry." Specificity shows awareness. Use I statements. "I messed up the order" beats "You made me late." Avoid qualifiers that dilute ownership. Skip if and but. Don't say, "I'm sorry if you were offended." Say, "I'm sorry I said that." State next steps. Ownership without action feels hollow. "I'll take care of the groceries tonight." Or, "I'll send the revised timeline by noon." Set boundaries subtly. Owning your part isn't admitting everything. You can say, "I dropped the ball on X and I want to figure out how we avoid Y next time." Try this short script the next time things heat up. Pause, breathe, say, "You're right to be upset. I didn't handle X well. That was my fault. Here's what I'll do to make it better. How do you see it?" That last question invites collaboration. When you own your slice, arguments stop being battles and start becoming problem-solving sessions. It's not weakness, it's strategy that builds trust. And trust is what turns messes into manageable tasks. Mirror feelings before you fix. Before you offer a solution, mirror the feeling. I learned this the hard way one evening when a close friend called me in tears about a job that slipped through her fingers. My first instinct was to list networking tips and rework her resume. Helpful in theory, but in that moment it made her shut down faster. After a beat, I finally said, "You sound really disappointed and like you worked so hard for this." She let out a laugh that was half relief, half sob, and then we actually talked. That small shift changed everything. Mirroring feelings is emotional validation, naming what someone is feeling without judging, minimizing, or immediately fixing it. It's not about parroting words back or being syrupy sweet. It's about creating a safe pause where the other person feels seen. When you say, "It seems like you're overwhelmed," you're giving permission for that emotion to exist. That permission builds trust, lowers walls, and often clears the space for problem-solving later. Why does this work? For a few reasons. First, feeling understood releases tension. When someone recognizes our inner state, our bodies don't have to keep proving it. Second, naming an emotion helps the person organize their experience. Suddenly, it's not a chaotic fog, but a specific feeling to examine. Third, it signals respect. You're prioritizing their emotional experience over your need to fix things. That creates a deeper connection. If you're wondering what to say, keep it simple and sincere. Try one of these. "It sounds like you're feeling really defeated right now. That seems like it left you pretty shaken. I can hear how frustrated you are. That would mess me up too." Avoid jumping to "at least" or "you should." Those lines dismiss the feeling and push people away. Instead, use follow-ups that invite more. "Do you want to talk about what happened?" Or "Do you want my thoughts?" Or just a listening ear. This gives control back to them. Here's a quick example to practice. Imagine someone says, "I messed up the presentation." You might respond, "Mirror, you're upset about how it went." Validate. "That makes total sense after all the effort you put in." Offer. "If you want, I can help brainstorm next steps, or I can just sit with you for a bit." Mirroring feelings doesn't take longer than fixing. It actually shortens the path to real help because it breaks through resistance. Try it the next time someone comes to you in distress. Name the emotion first, then offer support. You'll be surprised how often the problem solves itself once a person feels understood. Pass the praise, hold the fault. It's a short line, but it changed how I lead and how people respond to me. The idea is simple. When things go well, point to the team and name the people who made it happen. When things go wrong, absorb the heat privately. Take responsibility for what you could have done better and protect your team. I remember a product launch where a last-minute bug slipped through. The launch still looked good to outsiders, but internally a few engineers were exhausted and stressed. In the company town hall, I talked about how the design and QA did an incredible job under pressure. I named 2 junior engineers who stayed late and found a tricky edge case. Later that week, in one-on-one meetings, I told the team I should have scheduled more time for integration testing and that I missed a sign-off. That was on me. I apologized, explained how I'd changed the process, and asked for their input on fixes. That combination, public praise, private ownership, made a huge difference. People felt seen, not blamed, and they trusted me enough to be brutally honest about process issues going forward. Psychology explains why this works. Publicly praising others signals you're not jockeying for credit. Leadership isn't ego first, it's stewardship. That builds social capital. When you consistently give credit out, people are more likely to collaborate, take smart risks, and attribute success to the group rather than hoard it. Privately taking responsibility signals humility and competence. It tells your team you're not hiding, you're accountable. Humans prefer leaders who protect and learn, not leaders who play political games or throw others under the bus. There are practical ways to do this without sounding fake or performative. In public, be specific. Say, "Maya redesigned the checkout flow to reduce friction," instead of "good job team." Specificity shows you are paying attention and makes the praise feel earned. In private, own what was yours. Say, I should have pushed for more test coverage, and that was my oversight. Then outline corrective steps. Private ownership should lead to action, not just apology. Create routines, end retros with a public shout-out round. After major events, send a group email highlighting contributions and tagging people. Follow up with one-on-ones, where you take responsibility for what went wrong and ask how you can support. Be careful. This isn't about being a martyr or taking blame for things you didn't control. It's about distinguishing between what you can influence, process, priorities, support, and what you can't, every individual mistake. Also avoid vague blame. The point is to restore trust, not to dramatize failure. When you make passing praise and owning fault a habit, trust compounds. People are more likely to bring problems early, share honest feedback, and commit to solutions. Influence grows because your team knows you'll protect them publicly and learn with them privately. Try it in the next meeting. Point out one specific win, then later ask one person how you could have made their job easier. Small, consistent moves like that change the culture more than grand speeches ever will. Assume error before malice. Think about the last time someone did something that made you bristle. A partner forgot an anniversary, a co-worker sent a curt email, a friend ghosted your text. The immediate story most of us tell ourselves is that they did it on purpose. They're thoughtless, lazy, mean. That's attribution theory in action. We attribute bad intentions to people's character rather than situational causes. Assume error before malice is the intentional flip of that script. I used to be awful at this. A few years ago, I got furious when a collaborator missed a deadline. My inner monologue turned into an attack. They don't respect me. They're unreliable. I spent days stewing. Later, I learned they'd been dealing with a family emergency and hadn't even opened my last message. If I'd assumed error, that there might be a reason beyond malice, I would have saved myself anxiety and preserved that working relationship. So how do you actually practice it? Start with a tiny habit, the 5-second pause. When your gut reaction says, "They did that to annoy me," take 5 breaths. That pause gives your brain space to consider alternatives. Next, try generating at least 2 non-malicious explanations. For a delayed reply, maybe they were overwhelmed, phone died, they misread the notification. For a curt message, maybe they're rushing, stressed, or typing on a tiny screen. Use curiosity as your default tone. Instead of reacting with a judgmental text, ask a clarifying question. "Hey, I noticed we missed our plan. Everything okay?" That way you open the door for context. I've found that a single curious message often reveals the whole backstory and immediately dissolves the anger. Language matters too. Swap "you did this" for "I noticed" or "I felt." Saying "I felt hurt when our call got cancelled" puts the focus on your experience and invites explanation rather than defense. And give yourself permission to be wrong. Try prefacing with "I could be mistaken, but..." That reduces escalation and signals your willingness to consider alternative causes. This mindset doesn't mean ignoring patterns of harmful behavior. If someone consistently harms you, address the pattern directly. But assuming error first buys you a better chance to respond calmly, gather facts, and choose whether the incident is a one-off or part of a bigger problem. A quick little exercise to practice this week. When someone triggers you, write down the immediate accusation your brain makes. Then write 2 benign explanations and 1 probing question you could ask. That tiny ritual trains your automatic response away from blame. Assuming error before malice isn't naivete. It's generosity with strong boundaries. It prevents unnecessary anger, keeps conversations constructive, and more often than not, deepens trust. Let's move to how to turn those calmer conversations into repair tools that actually rebuild connection. Offer the last slice and mean it. Think about the last time someone actually offered you the last slice of pizza and didn't look like they were bargaining for the compliment. That tiny moment, a deliberate smallness, tells you more about a person than a 10-minute speech ever could. Small acts of generosity are like windows. You can see the furniture inside someone's character. Are they cluttered with hidden agendas or tidy with genuine care? I remember a late-night study session in college. We were all exhausted, everyone hungry. There was one slice left in the box. One kid reached for it, paused and said, "You go ahead." No pause, no fake reluctance, no dramatic sigh. He smiled and handed it over. Later, when I had to swear under pressure during a group project, he defended my choices without blinking. That one unforced gesture made him trustworthy in my eyes. Not because he had to, but because he chose to. It signaled clearly and quietly that he valued the group more than a single slice of pizza. Why does this matter in groups? Because trust isn't built in grand proclamations. It's built in 1,000 tiny confirmations that someone has your back. When you offer the last slice and mean it, you remove a little bit of scarcity from the room. You show people it's safe to be vulnerable, to admit they need something, or to risk being seen. Those small, authentic giveaways lubricate social gears. People start expecting generosity rather than suspicion, and that expectation becomes emotional safety. But sincerity is everything. There's a difference between "I'll pretend to give so you'll like me" and "I'll give because I genuinely want to." Performative generosity, the kind that comes with a need for recognition or leverage, actually damages trust. It smells like manipulation. If you find yourself giving with strings attached, take this now, but remember I did it. It's better to pause and reevaluate your motives. So how do you offer the last slice and mean it? A few practical things. Check your inner script. Ask why you're giving. If the answer is to help or to connect, great. If it's to buy influence, don't. Use a less theatrical delivery. A calm tone and relaxed body language communicate. This is natural, not "I'm making a show." Make it unconditional. Don't track the favor. Don't bring it up later in a meeting or on social media as evidence of your generosity. Notice context. In some situations, giving everything can be harmful. You can't be generous to the point of burning out. Healthy generosity includes boundaries. Try a small experiment this week. Offer something small that costs you little but could matter to someone else. The last piece, the closer parking spot, a compliment in a group chat. And don't mention it again. Watch how people respond. Often, that single unguarded moment will open more doors than a speech ever could. These tiny acts do double duty. They reveal who you are and create space where others feel safe to be themselves. Offer the last slice and mean it. And notice how trust quietly grows around you. Laugh at yourself before anyone else can. Then there's a simple move that'll change how people hear your mistakes. Laugh at yourself before anyone else can. I know it sounds small, maybe even risky, but hear me out. One time I walked into a meeting with 2 different shoes. I could have sunk into that heat, tried to play it off, or pretended I'd planned it. Instead, I pointed at my feet, said, "Trendsetter or time traveler, you decide," and sat down. The room loosened. People smiled. We got through the meeting faster and better than if I'd spent 10 minutes mortified. That's emotional agility in practice. Instead of getting stuck in embarrassment, which creates distance and awkward silence, you use light self-deprecating humor to move the emotion through you and invite others in. It takes the sting out of the error and replaces it with connection. People don't necessarily respect perfection. They respect honesty, poise, and the ability to recover. When you can genuinely laugh at yourself, you signal, "This is human, I'm aware, let's keep going." How to do it without sabotaging yourself? Keep it brief and specific. A single witty line about the exact moment works better than a litany of self-criticism. Classic me is vague. I just managed to copy my grocery list into the calendar. Organizational skills, 0, nails it. Use exaggeration, not self-hate. Say something absurd about your fail rather than tearing yourself down. Exaggeration turns embarrassment into a shared, harmless joke. Match the tone to the situation. A light-hearted quip in a casual meet and greet, perfect. A joke at your own expense during a performance's crucial critique, maybe don't. Emotional agility is about reading the room. Practical lines you can try. Well, that was my 5-minute audition for clumsiness. Nailed it. If anyone needs a demo of what not to do, I've got one ready. I was aiming for graceful. We'll call this modern interpretive movement. Warnings. Laughing at yourself shouldn't be a cover for lowering expectations of yourself or for habitually undercutting your authority. If you find yourself always deflecting praise by self-flagellation, that's avoidance, not agility. Also, don't make humor at your own expense about things that are sensitive or critical to your identity in contexts where you need protection or support. Try this the next time something small goes wrong. Spill, stumble, forgot a name. Observe the silence shift. Notice people relax and feel how quickly the moment passes. Transforming embarrassment into connection is a skill. It's not about being perfect, it's about being human, present, and resilient enough to laugh and move forward. Check in twice. The second, ask matters. People learn to hide feelings the same way they learn to tie shoes. So automatically you barely notice it's happening. A quick smile, a joke, I'm fine, and the conversation moves on. That reflex is emotional masking. It protects them from feeling exposed or from worrying others, but it also buries the real stuff. That's why the second ask matters. Think of someone you care about, maybe a close friend or a partner. The first time you ask, "Are you okay?" they might default to the safe answer. I had a friend who, after a rough week, kept saying "I'm fine" while scrolling, shoulders tight. The first check-in gave me a polite, "All good." It was the second, softer question. "You don't sound fine. Do you want to talk about any of this?" That finally lowered the guard. The tone wasn't interrogation, it was permission. The magic of the second ask is twofold. First, it signals that you're noticing more than the surface reply. That tells the other person they aren't alone in carrying the pretense. Second, it gives them an out from performing. People often mask to avoid burdening you or to avoid a deep conversation in public. A gentle repeat, especially when it's specific and non-judgmental, creates a safer doorway. How to make your second ask land. Be specific and gentle. You said you're fine, but you seem tired. Want to talk about what's going on? Specifics show you're paying attention, not just following a script. Lower your pace and volume. A calmer, slower voice feels less like pushing and more like an invitation. Offer options. We can talk now, or I can check in later. Whatever feels easier. Choice reduces pressure. Use small offers of care. Do you want company? A hug? I can sit with you. Sometimes presence beats words. Respect the answer but schedule a follow-up. If they decline, say, "Okay, I'm here whenever. Can I check in tomorrow?" That keeps the door open. Watch for masking cues, forced smiles, deflecting humor, overly brief answers, or physical tension. When you see them, the second ask can be as simple as, "I notice you've been quieter than usual. I care about you. Do you want to tell me what's happening?" No need to analyze. The point is to be steady. One important boundary. Persistence isn't pressure. If someone clearly says no and looks closed, respect that, but leave a clear next step for connection. And if you suspect they're in danger, talking about hurting themselves or others, escalate, stay, remove immediate risks, and get professional help. Try this the next time someone brushes off your concern. A second, caring nudge often cracks the mask and brings real feelings forward. You don't have to fix everything, Sometimes showing you'll stick around is the whole healing. Let one car in. If big systems, courts, schools, markets, are the skeleton of society, then the little things on top of that skeleton are what make the body move. The automatic courtesy, the tiny deference, the small sacrifices that lubricate everyday life. Think about your commute. You're two cars behind an exit when someone signals and slows to merge. You can switch lanes and race ahead, or you can pause, give the space, and let them slide in. 9 times out of 10, I let them in. Not because it's heroic, but because it costs me a breath and gives them dignity. Those tiny acts, letting a car merge, holding a door for someone with hands full, stepping aside on a sidewalk, have an outsized effect. They're short, but they're also communicative. They say, I see you. You belong here. We're sharing this space. In a city where anonymity can make us invisible, a small gesture reconnects us. It's not patronizing, it's an affirmation of mutual respect. I've watched a simple door hold ripple. The person helped grins, they hold the next door, someone behind them returns a wave. Suddenly, a line moves smoother, tension drops, and routine becomes humane. There's also a practical side. Social order costs energy, rules, enforcement, monitoring. When people default to cooperation in tiny ways, we lower those costs. Traffic flows better, lines move faster. People are less likely to snap at one another when small frustrations get diffused early. It's a kind of distributed maintenance. Every act of civility is a tiny repair to the social fabric. No single gesture prevents catastrophe, but collectively they maintain a baseline of trust that institutions depend on. And it's personal. I remember once being stuck in a slow lane behind a truck that wouldn't yield. I almost cut in impatiently, then caught the eye of a driver signaling me forward with a thumbs up to wait a beat. Letting one car in felt like an investment. 5 minutes later, the same driver waved me through. We both saved face. That exchange, brief and reciprocal, made the morning better without fanfare. If we want more cooperative communities, we don't only redesign systems, we practice these tiny courtesies until they're reflex. Notice opportunities. Assume shared dignity. Make those small sacrifices not as moral grandstanding, but as practical upkeep. Let one car in today. Civilization survives another day, not because of laws on a page, but because we chose to treat one another like neighbors on the road. Keep humor fresh. That leads us straight to one of the quiet killers of comedy. Habituation. Habituation is just a fancy word for we get used to stuff. The first time you tell a joke that surprises people, they laugh. Tell the same joke enough times in the same way, and that surprise wears off. The laugh gets smaller, then polite, then nothing. That's because humor often rides on novelty, a twist, an unexpected word, a fresh physical beat. When the twist becomes predictable, the engine that powers the laugh stops. I learned this the hard way. There was a little bit I used to do about my terrible sense of direction. I loved the callback. I thought it was clever, and at first people doubled over. But after a month of the same phrasing and the same pause, audiences started to nod instead of laugh. I was so attached to the bit that I kept repeating it, thinking the joke would carry the room. It didn't. The audience had habituated. My delivery was stuck in a loop. So how do you keep humor fresh? First, stay present. That doesn't mean forcing new material every night. It means listening. Watch micro-reactions, a raised eyebrow, a delayed grin, a breath before the laugh. Those signals tell you if the room expects that line. If you sense the room is on autopilot, change the shape of the joke. Slow the pause, swap a word, add a tiny physical beat. Often, a one-word tweak or a different angle revives the surprise. Second, lean into specificity. Generic punchlines age faster because they're easy to anticipate. The more concrete and particular your setup, a weird smell in a coffee shop, the exact absurdity of a relative's text, the harder it is for the brain to predict where you'll go. Specific details create new neural routes for humor to travel down. Third, use novelty honestly. Novelty doesn't have to be shock value. It can be a new perspective, a self-aware admission, or a brief improv riff based on the room. I'll sometimes abandon a rehearsed line mid-sentence when someone in the crowd reacts in a goofy way. And those improvisations, because they're born in the moment, often land harder than anything I planned. Fourth, rotate and evolve your bits. Treat recurring jokes like plants. They need pruning, new soil, sometimes a different pot. Callbacks are powerful, but save them for moments when they surprise again. If a joke worked last month, ask yourself, what small change can I make that keeps the core but makes it feel alive tonight? Finally, embrace humility. If a joke falls flat, don't double down with the same cadence. A quick acknowledgement, that one's tired, isn't it, can reset the room and turn the miss into a laugh. Staying present, specific, and willing to adapt is what turns a line from stale to startling. Laughter isn't a script to repeat. It's a conversation you keep fresh. Text when you're late, even 5 minutes. It sounds obvious, but I can't tell you how many times I've sat across from someone watching the seconds crawl, imagining every possible reason they're not there. That little spiral of, did I offend them? Did something happen? Is annoying, but it's also your brain doing exactly what it should, trying to make sense of uncertainty. A single line, running 5 minutes late, on my way, stops that spiral cold. That tiny gesture is respect in microform. Think of it like this. Respect isn't only big moments. Sure, opening the door or remembering an anniversary matters, but so do the micro gestures, the small communications that say, you matter to me right now. When you send a quick text about being late, you're acknowledging the other person's time and emotional bandwidth. You're saying, I see you are waiting and I'm not ignoring that. That reduces anxiety for the other person and signals reliability for the future. I remember once meeting a friend for coffee. I was running behind by 10 minutes. Traffic sucked. I shot a quick text. Stuck in traffic, 10 minutes. So sorry. She replied, no worries, coffee pit stop for me. When I walked in, there was no awkwardness, just a smile. Contrast that with a meeting where nobody texted me and I assumed the worst. It made me cold and guarded for the rest of the conversation. Tiny differences, big outcomes. This applies everywhere. Dates, friendships, family, work. In a professional setting, a short update, delayed 5 mins, elevator jam, keeps schedules humming. In romance, it keeps trust from eroding into resentment. In friendships, it shows you respect someone's plans. Over time, these small messages accumulate. They form a track record. People don't just remember the one text, they remember that you are the person who communicates, and that consistency builds mutual trust. A few practical tips. Have a couple of quick templates in your head. 5 minutes, on my way. Running 10, be there soon. Or, phone died, will be 5 late. Keep it honest and brief. Don't over-apologize. A short, sincere note is enough. And if you genuinely can't text, no signal, dead phone, follow up as soon as you can with what happened. Actions and explanations both matter. Remember, the point isn't to perform politeness, it's to be considerate. That brief sentence takes 2 seconds to type and can save someone 15 minutes of unnecessary worry. Respect as micro-communication is simple, powerful, and completely doable, even when you're just 5 minutes late. Learn the lesson before labeling the day bad. Before you slap a bad day sticker on everything, try this. Learn the lesson before labeling the day bad. I'm not talking about toxic positivity. I'm talking about cognitive reappraisal, a simple mental pivot that turns frustration into useful feedback. Picture this. Your morning felt off. The coffee spilled, a meeting ran late, and a text you were waiting for never came. Instinct says, ugh, today's ruined. That was my go-to for years. But one evening, after a string of small mishaps, I paused and asked a different question. What's this trying to tell me? That tiny change in wording stopped me from spiraling and let me see patterns instead of just pain. Cognitive reappraisal is exactly that, reframing an event so it changes how you feel about it. Instead of "this meeting was a disaster," try "this meeting highlighted where we need clearer expectations." Same facts, different lens. The emotion softens and your brain moves from blame to problem solving. Here's a short, repeatable process you can use in the moment. 1. Notice the label. Catch yourself saying or thinking "bad day," "ruined," or "failure." Say it out loud if you have to. Naming an emotion reduces its intensity. 2. Pause and breathe. 2 deep breaths. That tiny gap creates room for choice. 3. Ask the reappraisal question. What can I learn here? Or, what's the feedback? Make it specific. If your commute was chaotic, the lesson might be about leaving earlier, not about traffic hating you. 4. Reframe and act. Turn the lesson into a small next step. I'll set my alarm 15 minutes earlier, or I'll clarify the project deadline. A tiny action cements the reframe. Let me give you real examples from my life. Once, a video I worked hard on tanked in views. My instinct: I'm a failure. Reappraisal. Okay, who watched and what did they actually engage with? What can I tweak next time? That turned a blow to my ego into a checklist for improvement. Thumbnail, first 10 seconds. Headline. Another time, I snapped at a friend over something trivial. I could have labeled the whole day toxic. Instead, I asked, why did I react so strongly? The answer was exhaustion. Lesson. I needed boundaries that day, not apologies that would have smoothed over the root cause. If it helps, use a short script in your head. I'm frustrated. What's this trying to teach me? Okay, feedback received. One small change I can make is: reappraisal doesn't erase disappointment. It respects your feeling while refusing to let it be the final word. Over time, this habit trains your mind to seek information instead of issuing verdicts. You'll notice fewer catastrophes and more troubleshooting. Try it today, the next time something goes wrong. Name it, breathe, ask, and act. You might be surprised how quickly "bad day" turns into useful data. Share clouds as often as sunshine. It's easy to post the highs, the vacations, the promotions, the perfect coffee shot, and leave the low days for private scrolls. But when we only show sunshine, our relationships start to live on a polished surface. The depth is where the clouds are shared, the frustrated nights, the quiet disappointments, the moments you want to cancel plans and hide under a blanket. Saying those things out loud doesn't make you weak. It makes you human, and it invites other humans in. I used to edit myself so carefully. If I was tired or anxious, I'd smile through the call and pretend nothing was wrong. One evening, exhausted from months of pushing, I told a friend, I'm not okay lately. It felt risky, like standing naked in the rain. Their reaction wasn't dramatic, no big speech, just, okay, do you want to talk or sit in silence? That late-night message, that plain question, dissolved a kind of loneliness I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. Afterwards, we both felt closer, not because the problem disappeared, but because it stopped living inside me alone. Sharing low moments with people you trust does 3 important things. First, it normalizes struggle. When someone you care about admits they're not fine, it lets you off the hook from performing constant positivity. Second, it deepens connection. Vulnerability signals trust, and trust invites reciprocal honesty. Third, it dissolves isolation. Knowing someone else knows about your pain makes it smaller, less monstrous. If the idea of opening up feels foreign, start simple. Choose 1 or 2 people who have shown steady care. You don't need an audience, you need anchors. Use small, specific phrases. I've been feeling overwhelmed, or I'm having a hard week and could use a friendly ear. If you need space from advice, say so. I'm not asking for solutions, just that you listen. That clarity protects both of you. Remember, sharing isn't dumping, it's a two-way street. Be present when others share and accept imperfect responses. Not every listener will know what to say, and some days you'll want practical help while other days you'll just want company. Both are okay. So practice saying the short, true sentences that begin real conversations. The more you share clouds, the more you teach the people around you it's safe to do the same. Up next, we'll look at concrete phrases to open those conversations so you don't have to guess where to begin. Coach in private, praise in public. This one line is simple, but the way you live it out changes how people feel about you and about doing the work. There's a real psychological payoff here. Correction in private protects dignity, praise in public confers status. Together they build trust, motivate growth, and create loyalty. Think about how it feels when someone corrects you in front of others. Even if it's technically fair, there's a hit to competence and relatedness. Performance psychology calls this threat to face. Humans are wired to protect status inside a group. When you correct privately, you remove the threat. You give someone space to process, ask questions, and reclaim control. When you praise publicly, you amplify that person's status in the eyes of the team. That public recognition feeds motivation more than a private good job ever will. I'll be honest. I used to blur these lines. I'd make notes for a coaching conversation, then get frustrated in the moment and correct in front of the group. People shut down. A teammate later told me they respected my technical feedback, but felt like they couldn't bring ideas after being corrected in public. That stung. So I changed the order. Correction happens first, one-on-one with curiosity and clear examples. Acknowledgement happens later, where everyone can see the progress. How to do it in real life. Choose the moment. Pull someone aside or schedule a quick check-in. Make it private and uninterrupted. Be specific and kind. Describe the situation, the behavior, and the impact. When X happened, this led to Y. Here's what I noticed and what I'd like to see instead. Focus on growth, not blame. Use we language where appropriate and offer a next step. Let's try X next time is better than don't do Y. Follow up publicly with credit. At the next meeting, call out the improvement and tie it to team results. Be explicit about what changed and why it mattered. Here are 2 short scripts you can use. Private coaching. Can we talk for 5 minutes? I noticed in the last demo you skipped the risk mitigation slide. That made a few stakeholders ask follow-ups we weren't ready for. You're great at anticipating questions. Can we map out that slide together before the next call? Public praise. Quick shout out to Maya. She anticipated stakeholder concerns and added a clear mitigation plan. That saved us time in the meeting and gave leadership confidence in the roadmap. A few warnings. Don't fake praise. People see through empty compliments. Also, never do the reverse. Praise privately, criticize publicly. That will erode trust fast. Finally, scale recognition. Small wins deserve public nods, not just big headlines. That consistency builds morale. Try this for 1 week. Pick one correction you need to give and make it private. Pick one improvement to praise publicly. Notice how the person responds and how the team's tone shifts. Do it consistently, and you'll see people take more risks, own mistakes, and stay loyal. Because respect is the simplest currency of high-performing teams. Don't tease someone who's already shrinking. There's a big difference between the kind of teasing that tightens a room with shared laughter and the kind that makes someone fold in on themselves. Teasing lands when everyone knows it's safe, when there's mutual trust, clear boundaries, and a history that says, you can poke me and I'll poke back. But when a person is already hurting, insecure, or feeling small, the same joke doesn't bounce off. It sticks. I remember a moment with a friend after a tough breakup. We were at dinner and someone made a casual joke about always being single. I laughed with the rest of the table because that's what you do. But my friend went quiet, shoulders tightening. Later, she told me she'd been shrinking inside for weeks, replaying every comment that suggested she'd failed at a relationship. That one line didn't seem like much in the moment. For her, it was another little shove down the staircase she was already trying to climb. Humor depends on safety. That safety looks like awareness of someone's vulnerabilities, equal power between people, and an ongoing signal that laughter isn't a way to dismiss pain. When those things aren't there, teasing becomes an eraser. It erases dignity. It erases trust. The person being teased starts to self-monitor, censoring what they say, laughing when they don't mean it, shrinking away from moments where they used to be themselves. What's subtle about this harm is how quietly it accumulates. One misjudged joke might feel like nothing to the joker, but when stacked with other small slights, it erects a wall. People stop sharing the messy parts of themselves. They stop asking for help. They learn to preempt criticism by disappearing. Trust doesn't break like glass in one crash. It frays, thread by thread. So what can you do instead? First, pause. If someone seems down, hold the joke. Check in. Hey, are you okay? Is low cost and high impact. Second, use curiosity rather than punchlines. Ask what's on their mind. Listen without trying to fix it. If you're unsure whether teasing is welcome, opt for self-deprecating humor or neutral topics. It keeps levity without targeting someone's raw spot. And if you've crossed the line, apologize specifically. Name the joke and its effect. Don't deflect with, "I was just kidding." If you're the one shrinking, you don't have to absorb it silently. Naming it helps. That comment made me feel small. Sometimes people don't realize the damage unless it's pointed out. Teasing can bond people when it's mutual and kind. But when someone's already shrinking, a joke becomes a quiet chisel, carving away at connection. Treat humor like a thermometer. Use it to lighten the room, not to measure someone else's wounds. If it's not yours, don't take it. If it's private, don't share it. Now let's zoom in on something deceptively simple. If it's not yours, don't take it. And if it's private, don't share it. That rule sounds obvious, but the messy part is what not yours or private actually means in everyday life. It's not just about stealing a physical item. It's about photos on someone else's phone, a DM you're tempted to forward, a story someone told you in trust, or even borrowing emotional energy that isn't yours to spend. I'll be honest, I've been guilty of the small, slippery versions of this. Once I forwarded a screenshot of a friend's joke DM to our group chat without asking. It felt harmless in the moment. We all laughed. But later I realized it had made her feel exposed. That little share cost us some trust, and I had to apologize and explain. The awkwardness stuck around longer than the laugh did. Moral psychology explains why we do this. There's often a gap between knowing what's right and doing it. We rationalize, they won't mind, or it's just a quick share. Cognitive dissonance kicks in. We want to see ourselves as decent people, so we shrink the wrongdoing in our mind. Social pressures amplify it. When everyone is sharing screenshots or reposting content, the norm changes and boundaries get blurred. Add anonymity or distance online, and diffusion of responsibility makes it easier to ignore the human on the other side. Integrity, though, is quieter. It's the little decisions you make when nobody's applauding. Respecting property and privacy is more than avoiding punishment. It's about honoring people's autonomy. When someone hands you a story, they're handing you something fragile: context, vulnerability, sometimes shame. Treating that material like it's public property erodes trust, even if the harm isn't obvious immediately. So what helps? A few practical moves that have helped me. Pause before you hit send. Even a 5-second pause lets your empathy catch up with your impulse. Ask permission. It's simple and fast. Can I share this? And almost always appreciated. Default to no if you're unsure. Better to ask than to apologize later. If you cross a line, own it quickly. Return items, delete the post, apologize without excuses. Try an experiment. This week, pick one easy boundary. Don't repost someone's photo without asking, don't forward private messages, or don't borrow items without explicit consent. Notice how it feels to prioritize someone else's dignity over the small thrill of convenience. Respecting what's not yours is like tending a garden of trust. Every small act of restraint waters it. Every careless share tramples it. Over time, those small acts shape who you are, not by grand proclamations, but by the steady pattern of choices you make when no one's watching. Apologize without a paragraph. Now let's get practical. How to apologize without writing a paragraph. The truth is, sincerity is an anatomy you can learn, not a script you have to memorize. It has 4 simple parts: a clear acknowledgement of what you did, ownership, a statement of regret, and a willingness to make it right. Short, specific, no excuses. Here's why short works. When you pile on sentences, you give the other person room to pick apart your motives. You also give yourself room to hide behind explanations. A brief apology forces you to focus on the person you hurt instead of defending your actions. It signals, I see what I did, you matter more than my justification. I screw this up sometimes. One time I snapped at my partner after a long day and immediately started explaining why I was stressed. I remember how every but sounded like a stopgap, like I was more invested in explaining than in owning the hurt. Later, when I tried again with a simple, I'm sorry I snapped, I was wrong, I'll do better, it landed completely differently, short, owned, and followed by action. What to avoid? Avoid conditional phrases. I'm sorry if, because they make the apology about perception instead of responsibility. Avoid I didn't mean to as a first line. Meaning doesn't erase impact. And never start with but. I'm sorry, but is an apology with training wheels. It collapses under scrutiny. Practical templates you can say right now. I'm sorry I specific action. I was wrong. I shouldn't have said, done that. I'm sorry. How can I make it right? I hurt you by specific action. I'm sorry. I'll change. Notice the pattern: specific behavior, plus ownership, plus short regret, plus repair. That last part, asking how to make it right, is critical. It turns words into responsibility instead of performance. If context matters, offer it later and only if they want it. If you want, I can explain what led me to act that way, but I know it doesn't excuse it. That keeps the apology pure and gives space for honest conversation after the immediate harm is acknowledged. Tone and timing matter too. Say it sooner rather than later, and keep your body language open. Look up, be present, don't cross your arms. The goal isn't a perfect speech, it's to be believable. Brevity and ownership do more healing than paragraphs of justification. Play positive sum games only. That shift in mindset matters because most of the problems we face aren't scarce, single-solution puzzles. They're complex, multi-sided challenges that get solved best when people pool ideas and resources. Play positive sum games only is about choosing cooperation over cutthroat rivalry, reframing competition as co-creation so everyone comes out ahead. Let me be honest, I used to treat every project like a race. Early in my career, I chased the client brief like it was a finish line, guarding my process and undercutting potential partners because I thought that's how you win. Then I worked with a group of people I'd normally see as competitors. We pooled contacts, split work according to what each of us actually liked doing, and built something none of us could have made alone. Not only did the result go further than any solo attempt, but referrals and repeat work increased for everyone. That was my first real taste of a positive sum outcome. Here's the simple idea. Zero-sum thinking assumes one person's gain is another's loss. Positive-sum thinking asks, how can we expand the pie? When you look at a problem as co-creation, you stop defending and start building. That doesn't mean naive generosity. It means designing collaborations where value is multiplied, not just divided. 3 practical ways I use this approach. 1. Start by finding overlapping goals. Before negotiating, ask the other person what success looks like for them. I do this on calls now. What's a win that would matter most to you? Often the answers intersect in surprising ways: quality, reach, or learning. And those intersections are where collaboration is richest. 2. Trade strengths. Don't compete on them. If you're great at storytelling and someone else is great at design, swap roles to maximize outcome. In one project, I focused on narrative while a former competitor handled visuals. The client loved the integrated result, and both of our reputations rose. That gave us new leverage, not less. 3. Build trust through small, low-risk wins. Offer micro-collaborations first. A joint article, a shared workshop, or a quick referral. Small successes make it easier to scale up to bigger shared ventures. Trust compounds. This mindset also changes how you handle conflict. Instead of digging in, ask, what would make this better for both of us? That one question flips the tone of the conversation from defensive to generative. It's amazing how often the answer reveals options neither side had considered. Playing positive-sum games also protects your energy. Constant zero-sum competition burns you out. Co-creation channels energy into making new things, not into maintaining a narrow advantage. You build networks that recommend you, teach you, and bring you opportunities you wouldn't get alone. So the next time you face a competitor, a difficult stakeholder, or a limited resource, try reframing. Where could we expand value? What parts of the problem can we share? Who does what best? Treating situations as potential co-creation doesn't guarantee success, but it makes better outcomes possible, and often inevitable. Now, having shifted how we approach collaboration, let's look at concrete structures that make these positive-sum arrangements stick. Let people arrive at their own speed. I used to think good conversation meant filling every silence, steering everyone toward the same emotional tempo. Then I hosted a small dinner where one guest, quiet, guarded, sat back all evening while others laughed and traded stories. I felt awkward and nudged, asking questions, trying to rope them in. Toward the end of the night, when I stopped pulling and simply made space, they finally shared something honest. It wasn't because I was charming, it was because I stopped making them prove they belonged. That moment taught me the difference between pushing people into connection and inviting them. Social pacing is about matching someone's internal rhythm instead of forcing them to match yours. For introverts and people who process slowly, pressure creates a wall. The brain interprets rapid questioning, teasing, or public coaxing as spotlight pressure. Cortisol spikes, attention narrows, and openness retreats. Patience, on the other hand, says, your pace is okay here. Practically, that looks like a few small habits that change the tone of any interaction. Slow your questions. Replace rapid fire, and then what, with a calm pause. Silence isn't emptiness. It's an invitation to fill the space on someone else's terms. Offer options, not ultimatums. Instead of, tell me how you feel now, try, if you want to talk about it later, I'm here. That removes urgency and builds trust. Use soft language. I'd love to hear about that when you feel ready, feel safer than you need to open up. Create physical room. In groups, don't crowd the quieter people. A side conversation, a quieter corner, or an activity that doesn't demand emotional on time, like cooking together, gives them a way in without the spotlight. Follow up gently. Introverts often need time to process. A message the next day. I enjoyed our time, no pressure, just wanted to say hi. Keeps the door open without ambushing them. Patience isn't passive. It's active waiting with attention and respect. You're still present, still engaged, but you're choosing restraint over insistence. That restraint communicates safety more clearly than any pep talk. When people feel safe, they show up. Sometimes minutes later, sometimes days later, sometimes years later. The rhythm isn't your clock. It's a shared tempo that emerges when pressure drops and trust grows. We don't give people time because it's convenient. We do it because connection built under pressure rarely lasts. Letting someone arrive at their own speed is the small, steady work that turns acquaintance into ally, attendee into friend. Keep watching the space you create. What you don't say can be as welcoming as what you do. Say goodbye, like it might be remembered. Now, when it comes to endings, one tiny moment can do more to shape a memory than everything that came before. Psychologists call this the recency effect. We tend to give extra weight to what happens last. Combine that with the peak end rule. We remember the most intense moments and the ending, and you get a simple but powerful truth. How you leave often becomes the story people tell about the whole experience. I learnt this the hard way. A few years ago, I dashed out of a friend's birthday dinner because I had an early morning. No hug, no thank you. I sent a quick text in the taxi, "Great night," and that was it. A week later, when I thought about the evening, instead of the laugh we shared over burnt cake or the long conversations, I mainly remembered my abrupt exit. It felt sloppy, like I hadn't cared enough to stay. Contrast that with the last time I left a different friend's home. We stood at her doorway. I told her one specific thing I loved about the night. We hugged, and I said, "Call me when you get home." That ending stuck. The warmth of the goodbye softened every earlier irritation and made the whole night feel more meaningful. Intentional farewells work because they give the brain a clear, positive endpoint to latch onto. A rushed exit leaves a memory with an unfinished edge. Did I mean to leave? Was I rude? Even small, thoughtful actions reframe that ending. Saying one specific compliment, "I loved how you set up the playlist," sounds small, but specificity makes it real. A short ritual, a shared photo, a voice note sent as you walk away, or even a two-line message that names what you appreciated, turns an ordinary goodbye into a neat, warm bookmark. Here are a few simple moves you can use tonight. Pause for 10 seconds before you leave. Name one real thing you enjoyed and offer a tiny action. A hug, a follow-up text, or a selfie with a smile. For virtual goodbyes, leave a short voice message rather than a text. The tone carries more warmth. These choices don't take long, but they change the aftertaste of an interaction. So don't underestimate the exit. Say goodbye like it might be remembered, because often it will be. Try one small ritual this week and notice how the memory of the whole moment shifts. Celebrate micro wins. They fuel macro ones. Think back to the last big thing you tried to build. A book, a business, getting in shape, learning to code. There's always a long middle where progress feels invisible. That's where the progress principle saves you. Small, meaningful forward moves create a steady drip of motivation. Psychologists who study work and creativity call this the progress principle. The brain rewards perceived progress, not just big outcomes. A tiny win lights up the same reward circuitry, hello, dopamine, that makes us feel energized and want to keep going. This is why celebrating micro wins matters. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It's the little confirmations that tell your brain, yes, we're moving forward. For me, when I was writing my first long project, entire weeks vanished with no visible milestone. I started doing one concrete thing every day. Write a single paragraph, fix one scene, rewrite a headline. Every time I ticked that item off, I felt a small rush, just enough to sit down the next day. Those tiny victories stacked, and months later, I had a draft. So how do you do this in real life? Here are practical, human ways to turn invisible work into visible progress. Break the task into micro-tasks that you can finish in 15 to 60 minutes. Instead of work on course, make it outline lesson 3 or record 10 minutes of audio. Crossing that off sparks the dopamine hit. Use visual trackers. A checklist, a progress bar, or even a jar where you drop a coin after each completed task turns intangible effort into something you can see and touch. Create mini rituals for wins. I celebrate small deliverables with a 5-minute walk, a favorite song, or a coffee. It tells your brain the work mattered. Share tiny wins publicly. A quick message to a friend or a short update in a group creates social reinforcement. Saying, "I finished the outline for chapter 2" feels different when someone replies, "Nice, keep going." Reward the process, not just the end result. Praise the discipline. I showed up and wrote for 20 minutes. Not only the one-time achievement. Track streaks. The psychological power of "don't break the chain" is real. Streaks make consistency itself rewarding. A quick caution. Don't let micro-rewards become procrastination tools. The point is to make progress visible and reinforce momentum, not to celebrate avoidance. Keep your micro-tasks aligned with real forward movement. When the goal is far away and the grind feels meaningless, these little wins are the engine. They shorten the distance between effort and reward so you don't burn out waiting for the finish line. Try this for a month. Pick one big thing, define daily tiny actions, and celebrate each completion. Tell me how your momentum changes. Chances are those tiny sparks will light the way to the macro win. Don't finish their sentence if it costs them courage. Right after the moment someone gathers themselves to speak, one of the kindest things you can do is shut up. It sounds simple, but silence is a skill. When a person fumbles for the right word, when their voice cracks, when they start and stop, you're watching courage in real time. If you swoop in to finish their sentence, you might save a second of awkwardness, but you also steal a piece of their agency. Think about times you felt judged for being slow with words. Maybe you were upset and couldn't form a sentence, or you were nervous in front of a group. Remember the anchor of shame that can drop in your chest when someone finishes your thought for you. That's what it feels like to the person struggling. It can make them shut down, rewind, or decide it wasn't worth trying. Letting someone find the words is an act of respect. It tells them you trust their voice, even if it trembles. How to practice this without awkwardness? First, recalibrate your internal timeline. Conversations don't need to be efficient, they need to be safe. When there's a pause, count slowly in your head, 1, 2, then keep holding space. Use small, non-verbal cues to show you're present, a steady gaze, a soft nod, open posture. If you do speak, keep it to low-risk scaffolding. Take your time, "I'm listening," or "I'm right here." Avoid supplying content. Instead, offer permission. Also be aware of the contexts where this matters most. Grief, confessions, trauma, or when someone's sharing a vulnerable part of themselves for the first time. For someone who's been minimized or interrupted in the past, your restraint can be healing. For neurodivergent people, or those with speech anxiety, your patience can mean the difference between being heard and being silenced. If you feel the urge to help because the pause makes you uncomfortable, name it briefly. "I want to help, but I'll hold on." That small sentence models respect for their pace while acknowledging your instinct. Over time, repeated practice of this quiet patience builds trust. People learn they can risk honesty with you and keep their dignity intact. So next time someone stumbles, remember, your silence can be the kindest thing you offer. Let them find their words. Let them own what they say. That pause is often where courage is being born. Pain isn't a contest. Never one-up vulnerability. When someone hands you a piece of their pain, the instinct to jump in with your own story can feel caring. You want them to know they're not alone. But comparison is a sneaky thief. Even a well-meaning "I know exactly how you feel" or "that's nothing, listen to what happened to me" immediately shifts the spotlight. Suddenly, the room is about you, not them. Vulnerability, which is fragile and rare, closes up like a shell. I remember a time a friend called me midnight, voice shaking, saying her marriage felt like it was crumbling. My brain raced to fix it. I started listing things I'd done in my own relationship, thinking examples would help. She stopped me after a minute and said, "I don't want advice. I just want someone to sit with this." I felt embarrassed, like I'd failed her, but what I learned was huge. She didn't need me to top her pain, she needed to be seen in it. Comparison hijacks intimacy because it introduces judgment, even unintentionally. "It could be worse" minimizes. "I had it worse" creates competition. Both messages tell the other person their experience isn't worthy on its own terms. When someone tells you they're hurting, the most generous move is to make space for that hurt without resizing it to fit your life. So what does staying with someone's pain actually look like in practice? First, slow down. Silence isn't empty. It's an invitation. Hold eye contact in a way that says you're present, not peering. Put your phone away. Body language matters. Lean slightly forward, nod in ways that show you're tracking, not about to interrupt. Use reflective phrases that validate rather than compare. That sounds incredibly hard. "I hear how overwhelmed you are," or "it makes sense you'd feel that way." These statements acknowledge the emotion without trying to fix it. When you're tempted to offer a solution, ask, "Do you want my perspective, or do you just need me to listen?" Giving someone the choice restores agency and avoids unsolicited one-upmanship. Ask gentle, open questions that invite more depth. What feels the hardest right now? When did this start showing up for you? Questions like these signal curiosity and care, not judgment. If you don't understand, it's okay to say, "I can't imagine exactly what that's like, but I'm here to listen." There will be moments when you can't help but think of your own struggle. That's human. When it happens, briefly name it and then refocus. "That triggers something in me too, but I want to stay with you." That tiny admission can actually deepen trust because it's honest without overshadowing. Staying with another's pain builds unspoken trust because it tells them, in action not words, that their inner world is safe to show. Over time, those moments accumulate into real intimacy. People who know they can be broken in front of you will return because you've shown you can hold the hard stuff without turning it into a contest. What you do unseen is who you are. We've talked about how identity is shaped by the choices we show the world. Now I want to zoom in on something quieter but more powerful. What you do when no one's watching. The small, unseen decisions, the ones that don't earn likes or applause, are the ones that actually build who you are. Think about a moment that felt trivial. You find an extra bill in your wallet after paying for coffee, you're tempted to keep it. You see a colleague about to take credit for your idea and no one else notices. You're in a rush and a pedestrian is waiting to cross. These moments aren't dramatic, but they're moral checkpoints. Every time you act in line with your values in private, you're reinforcing a version of yourself that you trust. Every time you let convenience or fear win, you recalibrate what kind of person you believe you are. I remember a day years ago when I was freelancing and short on cash. I accidentally undercharged a client by a decent amount. It would have been easy to ignore the invoice and close the chapter. Instead, I sent a correction email and explained the mistake. The client appreciated the honesty and paid the extra. More important, I felt steadier afterward, like my internal signal matched my external ambition. That feeling lasted longer than any immediate gain from pocketing the extra money. There's a science to this too. Psychologists call it self-perception and moral self-schemas. We learn who we are by observing our actions. If you repeatedly act honestly when it would be easier not to, Your brain starts to accept honesty as part of your identity. Conversely, if you justify small shortcuts, you create pathways that make bigger compromises easier next time. Integrity compounds the same way habits do. This isn't about moral perfection. No one keeps a perfect score. It's about consistency and small calibrations. Asking yourself, what would I do if no one was watching, becomes a mental tool. It's a check-in that pulls you back toward the person you want to be, rather than toward the version that seeks approval or avoids discomfort. Practical and personal. Try a tiny experiment this week. Pick one small, usually private action, returning extra change, admitting a small mistake, giving honest feedback when it's easier to stay quiet, and do it intentionally. Notice how you feel afterward. If you shrug it off, that's data. If you feel lighter or prouder, that's also data. Either way, you're building awareness. The real payoff isn't in moral grandstanding. It's in waking up to your own history of choices and realizing the person you are is not defined by your photo ops or public pronouncements, but by those quiet, consistent acts of integrity. Up next, we'll look at how to make those private choices easier to keep. Practical habits that help you close the gap between who you say you want to be and who you actually are. Use emoji to soften, not to blur, truth. And here's a quick truth about digital empathy. Little icons and blunt tags can do more emotional heavy lifting than most of us realize, if we use them right. Think about a text you got that said, "Nice job." Cold, right? Now imagine the same message with a smiling emoji or a quick, legit tone indicator. "Nice job" or "Nice job, Jen." Suddenly, it's warmer, human. I've sent both kinds, and the reactions are totally different. Tone indicators and emojis help fill in the emotional subtext that voice and face usually provide. They tell someone whether you're joking, being sarcastic, or genuinely supportive. That softens the blow of direct words without changing the substance. In a group chat, a colleague delivering constructive feedback with a small thumbs up or a "thanks for digging into this" feels less like criticism and more like collaboration. That bit of softness makes people receptive instead of defensive. But here's where it gets messy. If you overuse emojis or pepper every sentence with OSS or multiple hearts, you risk blurring the truth. It starts to feel performative. Saying, "everything's fine" when it clearly isn't, hides honest intent under a veneer of cheerfulness. Likewise, leaning entirely on tone indicators instead of clear language, writing "I said that as a joke YJ" after every awkward statement, can come across as avoiding responsibility. I've watched conversations go in circles because everyone was hiding behind wink faces or passive-aggressive K replies. And avoidance is its own problem. Some people never use emojis or tone indicators because they want to seem professional or neutral. That can make messages land colder than intended. A simple "let's discuss this tomorrow" without any softener can trigger unnecessary anxiety. I used to stiff-arm emojis in work emails. Then a teammate told me my messages felt terse. Hearing that made me adjust. Clarity first, warmth second. So what's the balance? Use emjoy and tone indicators to clarify, not to obscure. If you're delivering honest feedback, say the feedback clearly, then add a human touch if it helps. "I think we can improve this here. Happy to help." If it's a sensitive topic, pair your message with a direct statement of intent. "I need to be honest about this. It's been hard for me." Don't substitute an emoji for an apology or explanation. Emojis should signal empathy, not replace it. Also, be mindful of context and culture. The same emoji can mean different things to different people. When in doubt, choose plain words and a single, well-placed emoji or a tone tag if sarcasm's on the table. That gives your message a heartbeat without hiding the pulse. Now that we know how to let emojis humanize our messages without turning them into masks, we can move into how to read other people's cues more accurately. So we respond with real empathy, not guesses. Be the one who notices. One small habit change can make someone feel seen for the first time that day. I learned this the hard way. Once I walked past a colleague who had been quieter than usual. I thought they'd be fine, but later found out they'd been on the verge of a breakdown. I didn't notice the shift in their voice, the way they kept looking at the floor. That stuck with me. Noticing isn't dramatic, it's catching the tiny departures from someone's baseline and responding with kindness. So how do you actually notice? Start with baseline. Pay attention to how people usually move, speak, laugh. The clues are subtle: a softer laugh, delayed replies, a habitual frown that appears more often, appetite or sleep changes mentioned in passing, or a friend suddenly declining plans. Eyes that dart away, hands that fidget more. Even silence can be loud. Someone who usually texts back fast and goes quiet might be signaling they're overloaded. When you notice, respond slowly and simply. You don't need to fix things. Try phrases that name what you're seeing and offer presence. You seem quieter than usual. Is everything okay? Or, I noticed you didn't finish your sandwich. Want to talk or sit together for a few minutes? Mirrors and permission go a long way. Reflect what you observe, then ask if they want support. Use gentle, open-ended questions and give them space to take you up on it. Silence plus presence is often more helpful than immediate solutions. Creating invisible safety nets means making it easy for someone to reach out before things escalate. Small, predictable rituals build trust: a regular check-in text, a standing coffee catch-up, a habit of asking, "How are you, really?" at the end of the week. Follow through matters. If you say you'll check in, do it. Respect boundaries, but be consistent. Know the triggers in your circle: anniversaries, work deadlines, family visits, and offer extra attention around those times. A quick practice. Today, pick one person and notice one small change in them. Say what you see and offer a low-effort option. Want a walk? Or, "I'm here if you want to talk later." Being the person who notices isn't heroic. It's human. It turns fleeting moments of loneliness into chances for care. Confidence is comfort with imperfection. You know that moment when everything you rehearsed goes sideways? The mic clips out, the file won't open, or you freeze on a line, and your first instinct is to scramble for control. Real confidence isn't the illusion that you can make everything perfect. It's the quiet steadiness that lets you keep going when perfection abandons you. Think of confidence as calm, not control. Control means trying to force an outcome. Calm means accepting the outcome and responding. That distinction changed how I show up. A few years ago, I gave a talk where my slides vanished 5 minutes in. Panic wanted to take the wheel. Instead, I took a breath, told a short story without slides, and the room leaned in. People remember the honesty more than the technical glitch. That felt like a small victory for being steady, not flawless. Authenticity becomes your strongest armor when you stop pretending you've got it all together. Admitting, "I don't have the answer right now," or "that didn't go as planned," does something strange. It lowers the stakes. When you drop the act of invincibility, other people relax around you. They stop measuring you against an impossible standard and start connecting with the real person behind the performance. How do you practice comfort with imperfection? Start small. Let one tiny thing go in your day that would normally trigger perfectionism: a messy email, a haircut that's a little off, a meeting without fully polished slides. Notice the outcome. It's almost never catastrophic. Each small tolerance builds a little muscle for composure. Use language as a tool. Replace scripted defenses with honest, simple lines. "I made a mistake there," or "help me understand what went wrong." Those phrases invite collaboration instead of defensiveness. They turn an error into information you can use. Also, prepare differently. Preparation is still valuable, but prepare for failure too. Have a short fallback story, an anecdote, or a pivot you can use if plan A collapses. That's not pessimism, it's pragmatism. It lets you stay useful in the moment instead of spiraling into self-critique. Finally, remember compassion. Comfortable confidence isn't arrogance, it's patience with yourself. When you fumble, treat yourself like a friend. Ask, what would I tell someone I care about? The answer is almost always kinder than the inner critic. So next time something goes wrong, try this. Pause, breathe, acknowledge the imperfection out loud, and keep moving. Watch how authenticity flips the script. People notice steadiness far more than perfection, and that steadiness becomes the quiet power that carries you forward. Let people grieve without tidying it. When someone you care about is hurting, the instinct is to clean up the emotional mess for them, to find a solution, hand them reassuring words, or steer them back to normal. I used to do that a lot. I'd say the quick fix things. You'll be okay, or at least. And then watch the conversation cool off. What I didn't realize at the time was how that impulse to tidy can actually shut the person down. Emotional containment is the opposite. It's staying with someone inside the mess without trying to rearrange it. Think of containment like being a safe room for feelings. You don't move the furniture. You don't repaint the walls. You let everything stay as it is, and you sit in the doorway with a calm presence. That presence, steady, non-judgmental, willing to hold, sends a powerful message. You don't have to fix this right now. You can feel it here, and I'll stay. Here are small, concrete ways to practice that. Use words that validate rather than correct. Say things like, I can see this is really painful, or that sounds unbearable. Simple acknowledgements do more than the best advice sometimes. They let someone know their feelings are true and allowed. Allow silence. Too often we fill pauses because silence feels uncomfortable. But silence gives space for thoughts and tears to settle. Sit there, keep an open posture, maybe reach out to hold a hand if that feels appropriate. Ask open questions, but don't interrogate. What's most on your mind right now? Invites sharing. Avoid pushing for the lesson learned or a timeline for recovery. Grief isn't linear. Resist tidy phrases. Phrases like you should or at least and time heals all are well-meaning but minimizing. If you catch yourself offering one, pause, breathe, try, I don't have the words, but I'm here. Offer practical, low-effort support. Bring food, sit quietly, take their dog for a walk. Small actions show you care without trying to change the internal process. It's also okay to set boundaries while containing. Emotional containment isn't martyrdom. If you feel overwhelmed, say so. I want to be here for you, and I need a short break to clear my head so I can be present. That models healthy support and keeps the space safe for both of you. A short story. A friend of mine lost her parent, and the first night people flooded her with advice about estate details, future plans, things to get done. It made her feel lonely in the crowd. The person who helped most was a neighbor who simply sat with her on the couch, brought tea, and let her cry without saying anything sticky or hopeful. Later, she told me that quiet companionship, no agenda, felt like permission to grieve. Finally, know when to bring professional help. If someone's grief is accompanied by thoughts of harming themselves or others, or if they're completely unable to manage basic needs, reach out to mental health professionals or emergency services. Containment supports healing, but it's not a replacement for clinical care when that's needed. Holding space without tidying isn't passive, it's active care. Being fully present, watching, listening, staying steady, honors the messy human work of grief in a way that fixes, advice, and tidy words never will. Now let's look at how to keep your own emotional balance while you hold space for others. Let them cancel without guilt. I used to treat every cancelled plan like a tiny betrayal, a missed call to my worth. Then a close friend started saying, calmly, I'm wiped. Can we rain check? And I realized something. My anger had less to do with them and more to do with my own need to feel needed. Letting them cancel without guilt is less about being passive and more about practicing emotional generosity. Think of it like this. When someone cancels because they're exhausted, sick, overwhelmed, or caring for family, they're asking for safety, not permission. Responding with resentment sends the opposite message, that their vulnerability costs you. Responding with understanding says, "You're safe with me." That safety makes people more likely to show up honestly later. It deepens trust. How to do this in a real human way. Pause before you reply. Give yourself 5 seconds to notice the first impulse, annoyance, disappointment, and breathe. That pause creates space for kindness. Use simple, true phrases. "Totally fine. Rest up and text me when you can." "No worries. I hope you feel better." "Thanks for telling me. Take care." These words cost nothing but convey care. Offer a concrete next step if you want the plan to stick. "Let's aim for next Saturday. I'll follow up midweek." That keeps connection without pressure. Don't weaponize availability. Avoid guilty statements like, "I rearranged everything." Even if that's true, a calmer truth like, "I had looked forward to it, but your health matters," communicates both your feelings and your generosity. Check in later, not to reproach, but to reconnect. "How are you now?" This reinforces safety rather than reopening the wound. A quick scene, your partner cancels dinner because they're drained after work. You could simmer all evening, or you could say, "Okay, I got takeout. Want to FaceTime later?" That tiny pivot protects your feelings and theirs. It makes a relationship feel like a team, not a ledger. This isn't about being a doormat. Boundaries still matter. If cancellations become a pattern that frequently hurts you, bring it up calmly. "I get needing to rest, but when plans shift a lot, I feel disappointed. Can we find a way to make commitments clearer?" That keeps compassion and accountability together. Try it this week. When someone cancels, notice your knee-jerk reaction, pause, and offer space. Watch how often generosity begets generosity. Over time, relationships that allow rest without shame become places where both people can be honest and safe. And that's the kind of connection that lasts. Design rooms and conversations with ramps. Think of a room you're about to enter. Bright lights, a circle of chairs, people already talking. For some of us, that room feels like a party we meant to attend. For others, it feels like a stage. Designing conversations with ramps is about making that doorway less abrupt so more people can actually come in. A few years ago, I ran a team retrospective where I assumed everyone could jump straight into a candid conversation about mistakes. One person froze, another gave one-line answers, and the real insights never came. After that, I started experimenting. Short check-ins, a written prompt before the meeting, a quiet corner for people to jot thoughts first. The next time, the tone changed. People opened up slowly, and the same mistake that had felt huge now became a shared learning. That's a ramp. What does emotional accessibility look like in practice? Start with easing entry. Give people a low-stakes way to join. Offer a chat box, an anonymous form, or a "what's one word" round. These reduce pressure and let people warm up. Signal what's coming. A short agenda, content warnings, or a "we'll discuss X if you prefer to listen, that's okay" line lowers the surprise factor. Offer choice. Let people decide when and how much to speak. "Do you want to say this now, or would you rather I check in later?" Puts control back in their hands. Pacing is the next layer. Fast conversations favor the loudest voices. Slow ones invite reflection. Use pauses intentionally. When someone finishes, count to 3 before jumping in. That silence gives others a chance to collect thoughts. Break big topics into small steps. Instead of "tell us how you feel," try "what's one small fact you notice right now?" Then, "what's one feeling tied to that?" Tiny steps make emotions less overwhelming. Check back often. Is this pace working? Is a simple habit that keeps people in sync. Language shapes safety. Small phrases can serve as handrails. I'm curious about your experience, and I don't need you to have an answer. Would it help if I summarized what I heard? You can pass if you prefer. Design the physical or virtual room too. Soft lighting, comfortable seating, clear headphones, or an option to turn off video reduce sensory load. In chat-driven spaces, pinned FAQs, reaction emojis, and threaded replies create multiple entry points. Normalize boundaries and exits. Tell people it's okay to step away, to ask for a break, or to leave a topic for later. That reduces the fear of being trapped in a conversation. Finally, practice empathy as a craft. Ask permission before giving advice. Label emotions out loud. It sounds like you're frustrated. And validate without fixing. Building ramps isn't about coddling. It's about designing conversations where insight and connection become possible because everyone had a gentle way in. Treat your future self like a friend you love. Imagine your future self as someone you really care about. A close friend you'd want to protect from dumb mistakes and small discomforts. What would you do for that friend? You'd leave them an umbrella before a storm, make them a hot mug of tea when they're exhausted, or cook an extra portion of dinner so they don't have to order takeout at midnight. Treating yourself the same way isn't indulgent, it's practical, kind, and quietly powerful. I used to berate myself for not being productive enough and then wonder why I kept making the same avoidable choices. One day, I started asking, what can I do today that my future self will genuinely thank me for? I didn't promise to become perfect overnight. I looked for tiny, friction-free things, laying out clothes the night before so morning me didn't have to make 10 small decisions, prepping a jar of chopped veggies so dinner didn't become a reasons to order out contest, setting my phone to charge in a different room so bedtime me could actually sleep. These are small systems, not grand promises. A system is simply a setup that nudges you toward the outcome you want without depending on heroic willpower. Examples that actually work. Automate savings. Schedule a small transfer right after payday so future you has a safety net without thinking about it. Prepare for mornings. Choose your outfit, pack your bag, and set the coffee maker the night before. Decision-free defaults. Subscribe to healthy groceries or choose a go-to recipe rotation so dinner decisions don't drain your energy. Build tiny rituals, a 2-minute stretch after sitting for an hour, a 1-sentence gratitude note at night, a 5-minute inbox clean before you finish work. The trick is to make the actions small, visible, and tied to something you already do. Habit stacking. After I brush my teeth, I'll put a glass of water on my bedside table. Turns an intention into a repeatable routine. And when you design your environment to reduce friction, charging station in a consistent place, keys by the door, you're removing little obstacles that future you would otherwise curse. Kindness to your future self also means forgiving the past and the present. You don't have to punish today's you to secure tomorrow's well-being. Think like you would with someone you love. Remind, prepare, and protect. When I started leaving short voice memos for myself, reminders, encouraging notes, quick plans, I found that stress in the morning dropped dramatically. I'd play that memo while making coffee and feel less reactive, more prepared. Over time, these tiny acts add up. They don't show up as dramatic life changes overnight, but they create a steady, compounding kind of kindness. Tomorrow doesn't need extravagant favors. It needs fewer small emergencies. So choose one tiny system you can set up tonight, something your future self will notice and quietly appreciate, and build toward it. From here, we'll break down exactly how to design those systems so they stick. Let absence teach you as much as presence. Sometimes people fall silent, not with a dramatic fight or a loud exit, but in the small ways. Fewer texts, longer reply times, a missed coffee that becomes a pattern. I remember waiting for a message after I'd shared something vulnerable. My thumb hovered over the screen, time stretching. Each unread minute felt louder than the last. That habit of checking, of guessing what their silence meant, revealed something about me I hadn't wanted to admit. I was leaning on someone else to tell me I mattered. Expectancy and attachment live in those empty spaces. Expectancy is the little script we run in our heads about how others should behave toward us. The timely calls, the enthusiastic replies, the reassurance. Attachment is how tightly we tie our emotional balance to whether those expectations are met. When someone goes quiet, it's not just their absence. It's a test of where we've outsourced our validation. Absence teaches in two surprising ways. First, it shows you what you expected them to provide. Was it emotional labor, constant availability, public acknowledgement of your relationship? Naming that expectation is powerful because it lets you negotiate it, either with them or within yourself. Second, silence exposes dependency. If one missed message spirals into panic, it's a sign you're giving someone else disproportionate power over your mood. That's information, not blame. How do we use that information without spiraling? Start small and honest. Notice the reaction. The next time someone goes quiet, pause and breathe. What's your first feeling? Hurt, fear, anger, shame. Say it out loud to yourself. Naming softens the story you might otherwise invent. Check the story. Ask, what evidence do I actually have? Most mental narratives are leaps, not facts. Were they always consistent before? Are there other reasons for silence? Busy day, mental load, personal crisis? Use absence as a mirror, not a verdict. If their silence is a pattern that consistently hurts you, it's feedback about the relationship, not a final judgment on your worth. That's where boundaries come in. You can decide what you will accept and what you won't, and communicate that clearly. Try a measured experiment. Put one polite boundary into practice. Don't be the only initiator for a week, or say, I notice we've gone radio silent sometimes. I miss checking in. See how they respond. Their reaction tells you far more than your anxious imagination. Cultivate internal scaffolding. Build sources of meaning that don't depend on immediate replies. Friends who show up in different ways. Hobbies, a daily gratitude practice. When your center is less fragile, another person's silence is informative rather than catastrophic. Absence often stings because we read it as rejection. But if we let it, the silence teaches us what we value, what we need, and where we're complicit in creating emotional dependency. The next time a message goes unanswered, don't rush to close the gap with panic. Observe, ask, reframe. You might discover the relationship needs a talk, or that you need to give yourself the attention you've been expecting from someone else. Think of silence as a teacher that doesn't shout. It points, quietly, to the work you can do to be steadier, clearer, and more free. A pun at the right moment is diplomacy. When a conversation heats up, the instinct is often to raise the stakes, argue harder, find more evidence, defend more fiercely. But there's another move that's quieter and, surprisingly, more powerful. A well-timed pun. Affiliative humor. The kind of light, inclusive wordplay that invites everyone to laugh with you, can act like a pressure valve. It doesn't win the argument for you, but it reminds everyone that you're still human and that the relationship matters more than the point being argued. I remember a time at a family dinner when my cousin and I were going back and forth over politics, voices getting louder, forks clinking louder too. Right as things were about to turn ugly, I muttered, "Okay guys, let's not let this become a full-blown fork fight." It was groan-worthy, yes, but it also broke the rhythm. There was a beat of silence, then reluctant smiles, and we actually managed to talk with less heat. The pun didn't solve the disagreement, but it cooled the room enough for listening to return. Affiliative humor works because it creates social glue without putting anyone down. It's about shared humanity. We all recognize the absurdity of getting so worked up about words on a page or a misread text. The best puns in tense moments are simple, gentle, and self-inclusive. They often include the speaker as part of the joke. Saying, "I'm part of the problem too, my brain's buffering," invites forgiveness. It signals, "I'm not above this, I don't think you're evil, we're both a little silly here." A few practical pointers. Time it. If someone's on the verge of tears or deeply hurt, a joke can feel dismissive. Read the room for genuine emotional wounds. Tone matters. Warm, low-key delivery works better than a cackling attempt at comedy. Keep the humor short. Long punchlines drag back into argument. And never use puns to belittle or to deflect responsibility. The goal is to reduce tension and restore perspective, not to derail accountability. When it lands, you'll notice posture change, shoulders drop, a small laugh that invites cooperation. That moment opens the door to real dialogue, the kind where people listen because they no longer feel attacked. So next time words start to escalate, try a soft pun. It might just be the diplomatic note that brings everyone back to the table. Show appreciation, even when no one's watching. Now, let's talk about something quietly powerful. Showing appreciation, even when no one's watching. I used to think gratitude was for big moments. Thank you notes, awards, speeches. But most of the time, the life that shapes us is the small stuff. The neighbor who waters your plant when you forget. The first warm sip of coffee, the extra minute a coworker took to explain something. Practicing appreciation privately is like training a muscle. You don't need an audience. You just need attention and intention. Start by noticing. That's the simple, underrated step. In the middle of a rushed morning, slow for a breath and name 3 tiny good things. Light on the floor, a text from someone you love, the sound of traffic that means people are on their way to work. Saying them in your head is enough. I do this while brushing my teeth. It takes 20 seconds and it changes the tone of the day. You'll notice patterns, small comforts, acts of kindness, things that don't have to exist but do. Thank sincerely. Avoid blank, performative lines. Silence and meaning often beat a loud show. When someone hands you a bag in the grocery store, I'll catch their eye and say, "That helped me, thank you." If you're alone and thinking of your partner or a friend, send a 2-sentence message. "Just wanted to say I noticed how patient you were with me today. I appreciate you." Those tiny, specific acknowledgements land. And when you're alone, don't neglect yourself. Thank your body for carrying you. Thank your brain for figuring something out. Saying thank you out loud to yourself might feel odd at first, but it reorients your inner voice from criticism to care. Let appreciation shape your worldview. Do this often enough and your brain starts scanning for gifts instead of gaps. Scarcity thinking, what's missing, what's unfair, shrinks. You become calmer in traffic, more resilient to setbacks, and more likely to give when you can because you've internalized abundance. It's not naive positivity, it's a practical recalibration. Gratitude makes you less reactive and more generous, not by forcing smiles, but by changing where your attention goes. Try a simple experiment. For 7 days before you fall asleep, name one small thing that went right and why it mattered. Keep it private. Write it in a notebook or say it quietly. You'll be surprised how quickly the list grows and how your perception follows. Appreciation, practiced privately, becomes the lens through which you live.